parents neglected me my whole life, never noticed I moved away, and now they're demanding I return to take over their responsibilities. I'm the youngest of five. And when I say youngest, I don't mean by a small margin. There's a 7-year difference between me and my next sibling. To be honest, I always felt invisible. Growing up, my brothers all had their own problems. And I believe my parents assumed that because I wasn't sick or struggling with mental health difficulties like the rest of them, I didn't need them. I'm not trying to play the victim, but this is the truth. The others were constantly in and out of hospitals, attending treatment sessions, and so forth. Meanwhile, I was right there. They call it the glass child, right? You can see me, yet you don't seem to see me. For the most part, I was okay with it. I spent a lot of time alone playing video games, reading, and keeping to myself. I had to learn how to entertain myself because there was no one else there to do it. It wasn't like I was supposed to care for my siblings or anything. Other individuals have told me that they had to give up their childhoods to care for their siblings and sisters. But that was not the case with me. My folks handled everything. So give credit where it's due, but because I wasn't making problems or living in perpetual crisis mode, like my siblings, I sort of slipped through the cracks. I didn't need aid, so I didn't get it. I don't believe my parents did it on purpose. It's simply that when you have 4 children coping with health issues, the healthy one becomes an afterthought. They were constantly so preoccupied with hospital visits, doctor's appointments, and school meetings for the others that I became the kid who didn't cause trouble and thus didn't get noticed. I was invisible not in tragic movie scenes, but in a practical, we've got our hands full way. When I was approximately 9, I made 2 friends, Mia and Clara, who were in essentially the same situation. Their families were not wonderful either, and we just discovered each other. In an unsaid way, we clicked. We knew what it was like to be neglected or left out, and that connected us. They grew to resemble my genuine family more than my own family ever did. We were inseparable throughout high school and remained. So even after graduation, we attended college together, graduated together, and then moved to a new state together. It was as if we had created our own small family out of the scraps that our real families could not provide for us. After I left home, my parents and I didn't talk much. That wasn't surprising, given how seldom we chatted while I was still living there. My mother would occasionally text me, primarily with a small conversation like, "How's school?" or "What are you doing for work?" Our connection was quite surface level, but it was an improvement over my teenage years back in high school. We scarcely spoke. I didn't expect much from them, nor did I ask for much a phone call from my mother last year. Highlighted how distant I felt from my parents. It was a few days before Thanksgiving, and she called unexpectedly. We never called each other, so I knew something was amiss. I had last spoken to her on the phone about a year before when she told me the time and location of one of my sister's funerals. I realized how little we had communicated. So she phones and asks what time I'm coming for Thanksgiving. I immediately sat there like, wait, what? Since I had no idea they were doing anything for Thanksgiving, it wasn't like we had a huge family tradition. In fact, in my entire childhood, I can recall only 3 occasions when they attempted to celebrate Thanksgiving or Christmas. It was simply not a thing in my family. I told her that I already had plans. I mean, I was going skiing with Mia and Clara, so I couldn't simply drop everything and come over. Plus, I lived 2 states away, and if I were going to come, I would have had to purchase a plane ticket months in advance, but she acted as if I was simply being tough. Then Mother started guilt-tripping me, saying she was going to be alone because my father was going to spend the day seeing my brother in the institution. The institution is a 2-hour drive away, so my father would be gone for the majority of the day. I got it. But she gave me 3 days notice, 3 days, and I was expected to simply show up and make her feel better. I told her I couldn't come, and she got upset, saying I didn't care about the family or whatever. I emphasized that I already had plans, and she hung up on me after the call. I sat there for a while feeling both guilty and irritated, like I hadn't heard from them in ages, and now I'm the bad guy for not returning home for Thanksgiving. I scanned over our past texts to ensure I hadn't missed anything, but there was no mention of Thanksgiving or wanting to see me. She threw it on me at the last minute, as if I was meant to drop everything and go. I ended up texting her later that night, stating that I had a ski trip planned for Christmas and wouldn't be able to attend. But I'd love to get up with her and Dad after the new year, trying to be polite about it. She didn't respond. I was still trying to shake off the strange feeling a few days after Thanksgiving, when something just bothers you and you can't figure out why. That's how I felt about my mother's attempt to make me feel awful for not coming home. She phones me out of nowhere and guilt trips me for not being there, but she never told me they were celebrating Thanksgiving. It was as if they expected me to be a mind reader. Anyway, by then, I'd much moved on. I was preparing for a ski trip with Mia and Clara. We had been planning it for months, and I was quite enthusiastic. The three of us hadn't taken a good vacation in a long time, so we were excited to just hang out and relax. Then out of nowhere, I received this text from my father. Now, my father rarely texts me, so I assumed it would be crucial instead of saying something. Fair, he says, if you don't come home for Christmas, I'm stopping your college payments. At first, I laughed. Like what, I graduated 3 years ago? What are my payments? It was so unexpected that I had to read it again to ensure I hadn't missed anything. I wondered if he was confused or talking about someone else, so I texted him back informing him that I had already graduated and that if he thought he was still paying for my tuition, he should check his bank account because someone was scamming him. I assumed that would be the end of it. Honestly, I expected him to feel silly once he realized I wasn't in school anymore. But no, a few hours later, he sends me another text. This one accusing me of being greedy and ungrateful. He said a lot about how much they had sacrificed for me and my brothers, and how I didn't appreciate any of it. Okay, first of all, I never asked them for anything. Second, I had no idea they were paying for my college because my grandmother had already covered it. She told me straight out that she didn't want my parents to interfere with my education. So she took care of everything herself. So obviously I had no idea what my father was talking about at this point. I'm pretty angry. I get if they're stressed out about my siblings, but guilt tripping me over something they didn't do, that's an entirely new level. So I responded back as politely as I could, saying something like, I'm sorry you feel that way, but Grandma paid for my college. I'm happy to catch up after the holidays, but I already have plans. I assumed that would shut it down, but no. My father chooses to go full drama mode and starts texting me about how I've abandoned the family, how I'm turning my back on them, and that he's done helping me if I don't make an effort. By this time, I'm just gazing at my phone like, what is going on? Have you abandoned the family? I've been living alone for years and they haven't even noticed. And now I'm the terrible person. Because I refused to drop everything and rush back for Christmas. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I became increasingly irritated as I thought about it. It was as if they hadn't spoken to me in months, hadn't bothered to check in or ask how I was doing. But when they needed something, it was my obligation to put things right. I was supposed to be their backup, or something I called Mia and Claire at event. They both agreed that it sounded like my parents were only using me as a guilt trip. Mia said that they probably wanted me back home for Christmas so they wouldn't feel awful about themselves, not because they wanted to see me. Claire, as usual, did not hold back and bluntly stated, screw them. You don't owe them anything. I chose to sleep on it and cool off before answering again, but as I lie there, my phone vibrates again. It's my father this time. The text is brief and frigid. He says, if you don't come home, don't bother coming back at all. I read that and felt completely numb. So how did we get here? How did we go from not speaking for months to virtually disowning me because I wasn't coming to Christmas? It did not even feel real. I looked at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to retaliate and say something horrible. I wanted to confront them about all the times they disregarded me and made me feel as if I didn't exist in that house. However, I did not answer. I put down my phone, rolled over, and attempted to sleep. I didn't want to be dragged into any major family turmoil just before the holidays. I didn't want to cope with the guilt trips, accusations, or whatever else they could throw at me, so I just left it the next morning. I received more texts this time from my mother. She didn't say much, just that they were disappointed in me, didn't understand why I was so aloof, and hoped I would reconsider. I couldn't help but giggle a little, because far away didn't begin to describe it. I'd been distant all my life, and they were only now noticing I ignored the text again and concentrated on preparing for the ski trip. Mia and Clara were excited, and I was too. It felt like the ideal vacation from all the family drama we left the next day. And for the first time in a long time, I forgot about my parents. I did not feel guilty. I did not feel sorry. I simply felt free. Of course, things couldn't remain peaceful. Indefinitely, just when I thought I'd moved on, I received another message from my mother this time. In the middle of the journey, she was not giving up. She stated that if I did not return home soon, they would have to begin making decisions about the future without me. Decisions that I would not like. That's when something clicked. They were planning something greater than Christmas. Perhaps it had to do with one of my brothers or something about the house. I had no idea what was going on, but it soon became clear why they were pushing so hard. They wanted me back for more than simply the holidays. That knowledge felt like a punch in the belly. All this time, I assumed they were just clinging or lonely. But this was never about me. Not really. It was about what they could get out of me. I was finished. So after that whole drama with my folks trying to guilt trip me, I assumed things would calm down. I ignored their texts, went on the ski vacation, and tried to remember that I had my own life and goals and I was not going to let them drag me back into their world of guilt and expectations. But of course, it was not so easy. I was back home, just getting back into my routine when I received a message from my older brother, Jake. Now, I hadn't spoken to Jake in months, probably longer. Jake was the one sibling who, as we grew older, I thought would understand me. He wasn't as sick as my other brothers, so I always assumed we may have had something more, but he was always too caught up in his own life, whatever. Anyway, seeing his name appear on my phone astonished me. His message was straightforward. Hey, we need to talk. I had no idea what he wanted, but I was not in the mood for more family turmoil. I said about what? A few minutes later, he calls me. I contemplated whether to respond, but curiosity got the best of me. So I pick up the phone, and before I can say, "Hey, Jake," dives right into it. "Mom and Dad have been talking about making you the legal guardian for one of the boys when they're gone." I swear I almost dropped my phone. My heart was beating, and I sat there shocked for a few seconds. Was this some sort of joke, like after all these years of hardly being present in my life, they're just going to put this obligation onto me? What the hell are you talking about? I eventually managed to ask Jake's side, as if I were the one acting ridiculous, how things are with Mom and Dad. They've got a lot on their plate with the other boys, and they're not going to be around forever. They need to know someone's going to step up and take care of things when they're gone. I could feel my blood boiling. And they think that someone is me after everything after. All the ignoring and guilt tripping, they just assume I'm going to drop everything and take over their mess. Jake didn't seem to get why I was unhappy. Look, I know it's a lot, but you're the only one who's really stable. The rest of us, we've got our own issues. I nearly laughed. Yeah, well, maybe you guys should have thought about that before now. I didn't even know this was a thing. They never told me. They were going to talk to you about it, said the man, but I figured you should know before they tried to spring it on you. I was pissed. This wasn't just about Christmas or Thanksgiving anymore. It was bigger. They were preparing something long-term, and they hadn't thought to contact me until now. When it was convenient for them, they hadn't spoken to me in years, and now they expected me to take responsibility number. Just no. So what they've been discussing this behind my back, I question still trying to figure it out. Like they just decided I'd take on the responsibility without even asking me. Yeah. Pretty much Jake agreed they've been planning it for a while. I sat in silence for a minute, staring at the wall and trying to digest everything. Part of me wanted to shout at Jake, but I knew it wasn't his fault. He was simply the messenger, but that didn't change the fact that my parents were ready to screw me down big time. They weren't simply asking for a favor. They asked me to spend the rest of my life cleaning up after them. I was done being invisible, but I wasn't going to be their backup plan now. So what am I supposed to do? I inquired, feeling more discouraged than anything. Just drop my whole life and move back home? Give up everything I've worked for? Jake did not have an answer for that. He attempted to talk about how difficult things were for our parents, how they were straining to keep up with my brother's care, but I didn't care. I had spent my entire life being shunted to the sidelines because I was not a problem. Now they wanted to utilize me since I was the only one who had my life in order. It was unfair. I'm not doing it. I responded, interrupting him mid-sentence. I'm not going to be their backup. They didn't give a crap about me for the last 25 years, and they sure as hell don't get to make me responsible for everyone. Now, Jake remained silent for a moment, then said, I get it, I do. But you're still part of the family. This word made me want to shout yes. I was a member of the family, but only when it was convenient for them, only when they needed it. When I was younger, they didn't care if I was fine or if I needed assistance. But now that they were afraid of what the future contained, I was exactly what they needed to tell them. I'm not interested, I replied, and don't bother calling me about this again. I hung up before Jake could reply for long. I sat there staring at the phone, trying to relax. I felt as if my entire life had been leading up to this moment. This time, when I'd finally had it enough with the guilt trips, enough with the deceptive texts, enough with being ignored and then used. I wasn't going to be their safety net anymore. Jake and my parents did not contact me for several days. It was almost as if they were waiting for me to wake up to alter my opinion and to be the good daughter they had suddenly decided I should be, but I wasn't about to move. I was not going to let them throw their issues on me simply because I was the last one standing. Then a letter arrived in the mail. It was from my mother. She hadn't even called. She had simply sent a letter, as if we were living in the 1800s or something. The letter was lengthy and rambling, full of the same guilt-tripping nonsense I'd heard before she went on about how much they needed me, how difficult things were for them, and how they had no idea what they would do if I didn't help the final part. However, irritated me greatly, my mother wrote, We're not asking for much. Olivia, we just need to know that when we're gone, someone will step up for the family. That's when I recognized what this was all about. They didn't care about me. They just worried about making sure their mess was cleaned up. After they left, they didn't want me back because they miss or love me. They wanted me because I was convenient. And the only one who hadn't broken apart, I crumpled the letter and tossed it in the trash. I was finished. Update 1. After receiving that letter from my mother, I believed I had reached my limit. What else could they throw at me that I hadn't seen? I was already tired of their guilt trips, manipulations, and attempts to hold me accountable for their mess, but of course I was mistaken. It wasn't finished. Not even close a week or two after I discarded the letter, I received another call this time. It came from a number I did not recognize. I almost didn't pick up, but something inside me was intrigued. Maybe it was Jake again, or one of my parents trying a different number after I ignored theirs regardless. I took up, Hey, Olivia, it's Sarah. Now, Sarah is one of my sisters. We were never very close. I mean, she was constantly dealing with her own issues, hospitals, therapists, everything. I felt sorry for her growing up, but I didn't truly know her. We were essentially strangers living under the same house. So hearing from her now, after everything seemed strange, hey, I replied, unsure where this was going. Look, she said, I know things have been kind of rough between you and Mom and Dad, but I really need you to listen to what I'm going to say. I could already feel my stomach dropping. I thought, here it comes, increased guilt. More attempts to draw me back in. What is it? I inquired, attempting to seem impartial while bracing myself for whatever was coming. She took a big breath and said, They're not doing well. Like really not doing well. Dad's health is going downhill fast. And they're freaking out because no one's stepping up to help with the boys. They're scared. Olivia, they don't know what to do. I did not say anything for a second. It's not that I didn't care. I did. I did not want to see anyone suffer, including my parents. But after everything, after years of them not caring about me, I couldn't simply jump in and fix things for them. I was not their Band-Aid. I'm sorry to hear that. I stated with great care, but I can't just drop everything. I have a life too. Sarah, she sighed, clearly frustrated. I get that, but you're the only one who's in a position to help. Jake's barely holding it together, and you know what's going on with me and the others. There's no one else. Olivia desperate because they ignored this for years. I shot back, feeling my fury rise again. They let this all build up, thinking it would just go away. And now, because I'm the one who managed to get out and make something of my life. It's my responsibility. That's not fair, Sarah. I know it's not fair, she continued slowly, but this is where we are. They need help. And there it was again, same old story. Same old guilt no matter what I did or how far I tried to get away from it. They always found a way to bring me back. I could feel the strain growing inside me, the fury and animosity that had been simmering for years coming to a head. I'm not doing it. I responded, my tone harder than intended. I'm not going to be the one to clean up their mess. They didn't care about me when I was a kid. Did, and they sure as hell don't get to come to me now. Just because it's convenient. I've got my own life, they need to figure this out themselves. When Sarah spoke again, I could tell she was hurt. I get it, Olivia, I really do. But this isn't about you or me, it's about the family. It's about what's going to happen to the boys when they're gone. If we don't step up, who will that hit me hard? Not because I suddenly felt responsible, but because it reminded me of how imprisoned we all were. My parents had neglected Edme for years, forcing me to the sidelines, and now they were attempting to use me as an escape plan. And what about my siblings? They were caught in the thick of it all. Just like I was, only they lacked the strength to fight back. I'm sorry, I repeated gentler this time, but I can't, I won't. There was a long silence, and I could sense her disappointment over the phone, but I was not going to give up. Not this time. I could not. Okay, she finally said, her voice lifeless. I'll tell them. She hung up before I could say anything further. I sat there for a while, staring at my phone, feeling both relieved and guilty. I was well aware that I owed nothing to my parents, but it still ached. It stung knowing that my family was falling apart and that I had no control over it. Perhaps I wasn't powerless. Perhaps I was no longer willing to sacrifice myself for them. A few days later, I received another letter from my mother. This time, things were considerably worse. She didn't even bother with greetings. She went straight to the guilt trip. She wrote about how disappointed she was in me, how I had let the family down, and how she couldn't believe I would abandon them in their time of need. She tossed in a lot of things about how difficult it was for her and my father, how much they'd suffered for us, and how she didn't know what she'd done to deserve such a selfish daughter. It was brutal. And for a little while it worked. I felt that old familiar sting of shame, the guilt I had felt my entire childhood. But then I remembered all the years I'd spent being invisible, all the times they'd forgotten about me, and all the times I needed them. But they weren't available, and I knew it wasn't. Because they needed aid, this was about control. This was about them attempting to draw me back into their web, making me feel as if I owed them something, but I owed them nothing, not anymore. I crumpled the letter and put it in the trash, just like the previous one. I was finished, I was done. Being their pawn, I was done, allowing them to influence me. I had my own life now, and I was not going to let them take it away. The following day, I blocked their numbers. I also blocked Jake just to be cautious. It was not an easy decision, but it was the only one that seemed right. I couldn't keep letting them bring me down and make me feel responsible for their troubles. They'd made their decisions, and now they had to live with them for the first time in a long while. I felt liberated. Update 2. Blocking their numbers seemed like a relief. Like a big weight had been removed from my shoulders for the first time. Well, ever. I had control of the situation. I wasn't sitting there expecting another guilt-inducing message from my mother or a surprise call from Jake. It was quiet, peaceful, but of course that did not endure. About 2 weeks after I blocked them, I received a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and honestly, I assumed it was a delivery or anything, but as I opened the door, there she was, my mother, standing on my porch as if she had every right to be there. I'm not sure how she found me. I hadn't exactly been hiding, but I didn't expect her to just walk up at my apartment. She looked different. I suppose I'm older now, or perhaps it was just stress. In any case, I could see she'd had a difficult time, but I didn't feel sorry for her anymore. What are you doing here? I inquired, keeping my voice as calm as I could. She did not respond right away. She stood there staring at me as if she didn't recognize me. Eventually, she spoke. We need to talk. Olivia, I exhaled. No, we really don't. I've said everything I needed to say. I've made my decision. She took a step forward as if she was about to enter, but I stood in the doorway and blocked her. I was not going to let her in and turn this into another guilt trip. Please just listen. She continued, her tone softening. Your father's getting worse, Hunes, in and out of the hospital. And we don't know how much time he has left. I don't know what to do. Olivia there. It was the card she'd been hoping to play. The "your father is dying" card. She didn't state anything directly, but I knew she was hinting at it. And I'm not heartless. I did not want my father to suffer. But after everything they'd put me through, I couldn't just abandon everything and rush to their side. "I'm sorry," I murmured, trying to keep my voice steady. "But this isn't my problem. You and Dad have had years to figure this out. You can't just show up now and expect me to fix everything." She looked at me as if I'd hit her. "I'm not asking you to fix anything. I, I just need you to be there for the family." "For the family?" I asked, nearly laughing. "What family?" "The one that ignored me for 25 years. The one that only talks to me when they need something that's not a family, Mom. That's just manipulation." Her eyes widened, and I wondered whether she was going to disagree with me, but instead, she started crying right there on my doorstep. She burst into sobs, and I didn't know what to do. I wasn't going to welcome her in, but I also couldn't stand there and watch her cry. "Look." I whispered softly, "I completely understand how difficult this is for you, but I am not your backup plan. I'm not the person who will step in and make things right. You made your decisions, and now you must live with them." She dried her eyes and looked up at me, and I could see the rage begin to replace the sadness. "We did our best. Olivia, you don't comprehend what it was like to raise all of you and deal with everything. We didn't have time for you since we were focused on keeping everyone else alive." There it was. This is the excuse. I had heard the same excuse a million times before, and that's not my fault. I added my voice firmer. "You made the choice to have 5 children. You choose to focus on everyone else and leave me behind. It was your decision, not mine, and now you're making me feel guilty about it." "I will not do that, Mom. I will not." She stood there for a long time, not saying anything, and staring at me as if she didn't recognize me anymore. And perhaps she didn't. Maybe in her mind, I was still the tiny kid she could overlook because I wasn't causing a problem, but I wasn't that kid anymore. I was done being invisible. Eventually, she spoke. "Is that it? Will you simply ignore us?" I shake my head. "Number, you turned away from me a long time ago. I'm finally walking away." She had nothing to say about that. She just turned and walked away, returning to her car. I watched her leave, experiencing an odd combination of feelings. Part of me was sad, but the majority of me felt liberated, as if I finally let go of something I'd been holding for years, something I should have let go of long ago after she departed. I went back inside and sat down, trying to digest what had just transpired. I wasn't angry anymore. I was not even hurt. I was just finished. I'm done with the guilt, the manipulation, and the continual feeling that I wasn't enough. I was not going to be their backup plan. I was not going to be their last option. I had my own life to live, and I was not going to let them drag me down any longer. The following couple weeks were quiet. I didn't hear from anyone, no calls, letters, or anything. And honestly, that was the best I had felt in a long time. I focused on my career, my friends, and my life. I wasn't glancing over my shoulder, waiting for their next communication. I was no longer living in the shadow of their expectations. Then, approximately a month later, I received an email. This time it's from Jake rather than my mother or father. It was brief, only a few sentences, but it contained everything I needed to know. "Dad passed away last night. I thought you should know." I stared at the email for a long time, unsure how to react. I wasn't astonished. I knew it was coming, but I did not feel sorry either. I didn't feel much of anything. I considered answering. I considered calling Jake, asking how he was doing, and maybe even giving my condolences. But then I realized that this was simply another stage in the same cycle, another opportunity for them to bring me back in, and I was not going to fall for it this time. I closed the email without responding and continued on with my day. I wasn't a part of their world anymore, and I was finally comfortable with it. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Thanks.